All right, we're going to go ahead and get started here right on time. Thank you all for joining us today. We want to welcome you to today's webinar, Digging into the Land Market Survey, Top Market Trends, presented by NAR research economist, Gay Karoritan. My name is Jessa Friedrich, and I'm the marketing manager for RLI, and I will be your host today. The REALTORS Land Institute, the voice of land, continually strives to provide our members with the expertise, camaraderie, and resources that are the foundation for all land real estate professionals to become the best in the business. So let's get started. Every year, the REALTORS Land Institute and the National Association of Realtors Research Group partner together to conduct and publish a national land market survey. This annual survey is a benchmarking tool for land professionals and landowners to reference in helping make decisions for their business. We'd love to hear from you today during our presentation. We encourage you to type your questions into the chat box, and we will answer them at the end of today's webinar during the Q&A session. I'm so pleased to introduce to you Gay Karoritan, our presenter today. She's a research economist at the research group of the National Association of Realtors, a trade association of over 1.3 million members. She joined NAR in 2012, and in her role, Gay analyzes how macroeconomic and demographic trends affect the national and local residential and commercial real estate markets. She has an MS in Statistical Science from George Mason University, an MA in Economics from the University of the Philippines, an MS in Industrial Economics from the University of Asia and the Pacific, and a BS in Business Economics from the University of the Philippines. She's also a certified business economist, a designation conferred by the National Association for Business Economics as a mark of professional accomplishment, experience, abilities, and a demonstrated mastery of the body of knowledge critical for a successful career in the field of economics and data analytics. For those of you just joining, welcome to today's webinar session, Digging into the Land Market Survey, Top Land Market Trends. Gay, thank you for presenting today. The floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you, Jess, and good afternoon or good morning to everyone, wherever you are. Let me just dig right into the slides. Sorry about that. Okay, that's me. I was introduced. Okay. Just to give you a roadmap of what we'll do today, I'll talk briefly about the survey, and Jessa already had alluded to the purpose of this research and the collaboration with RLI, but I'd like to essentially focus on the methodology. And then we'll discuss the economic environment that shaped the land market in 2017 and 2018, and then go to the report's findings and the land issues that were identified by the respondents from the survey. I hope you can hear me all right. I hear somebody else also.
Yeah, go ahead and continue, Gay. We've got everyone muted. I'm muting some people as they come on.
Right.
You can go ahead and keep going.
So I'm not able to, there it is. Okay, so Jess had already mentioned that the REALTORS Land Institute and the National Association of Realtors started this collaboration, and it actually started way back in 2014, but we refined the survey through the years, and mainly the annual survey started in 2016. And it really is intended to gather information about land transactions. So NAR already collects information about the housing market, commercial market, but at that time there was no survey about the land market. So that was the idea. You know, the idea was to dig deeper into land transactions among our land members and ask basic questions like, you know, where do you guys conduct most of your land business? What type of land sales do you make? what is the trend with regard to land sales volume and land prices, who are the main types of buyers and sellers. So just basic types of land transaction information that NAR and RLI did not have at that time. And so that was really the rationale for the survey. So the survey is sent out to, was sent out to about 1,300 RLI members, and it's 5,000 prospects. And of those, we had about 809 respondents. And RLI sent out the survey, and during the period October 8th to November 23rd. And essentially the survey asked about land market transactions during the reference period of October 2017 to September 2018. So we are looking here at a 12-month period. Okay, so for those of you who may be statistically inclined, the 809 respondents gives us a margin of error about plus or minus 3%. So this is just a pitch. If you participated in the survey this year and in past year survey, thank you so much. Next year, when we send out the survey again, hopefully you will also participate and join in so that, you know, we have more respondents. As you know, the more respondents, the better the better and the deeper data, the deeper is the data cut that we are able to do. Sorry, I'm having a bit of a difficult time here. Okay. So who were the respondents? So essentially of those 809 respondents, 48% mentioned that they are members of the REALTORS Land Institute. 75% were from NAR. And we also see here that about 7% were CCIM members or commercial members. Then for this year, we also added the Society of Foresters and the National Auctioneers Association as designations that respondents can choose from. And so you have about 4% of that. And as I go through the report, I'll be breaking down the data by regions. And so this is a map of the RLI regions. Many or all of you are probably familiar with your own regions. So RLI has 10 regions. So just as a guide, you start with region 1 on the northeast, and then you just go counterclockwise. Region 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Region 5, 6 would be in the west. Region 7 would be your Texas, Oklahoma. Region 8 would be your South region, which will also include, Kentucky, Tennessee, Louisiana. Region 9 would be, Region 9 is Kentucky and Tennessee, and then Region 10 would encompass Florida and Virginia. So that's how you would visualize the map and the RLI regions when we go through the presentation. And so in terms of the distribution of the respondents, of these 809 respondents, 66 of them came from regions 7, 8, 9, 10. So again, if you recall that map, region 7 would include, as I said, the region of Texas, and then 8, 9, and 10, those would be the regions in your south area. So you already have some sort of projection that most of the land transactions that we'll be talking about are essentially coming from these 4 regions, which accounted for 66% of our respondents. Now, we also have 5 respondents from Canada, 1 respondent from Latin America. And you know, this just gives it an idea of the extent of the membership of RLI, but we don't really have, as you can see and understand, we don't really have a large enough sample size to do a breakdown and analysis for our respondents from Canada. Okay, so what is the main finding that we have for 2018? So again, let me just refresh your mind. When we say 2018 survey, we are referring to the 12-month period from October 2017 to September 2018. So that is our coverage. And the survey is conducted in October. And so when we ask questions, we would think that respondents will still have in their minds, a fresh recall of their past transactions. So when we say 2018, we are again referring to October 2017 to September 2018, and the next 12 months will be that next 12-month cycle. So essentially the key findings, there it is, it's slow. So the land market is experiencing a slow but steady growth. So sales volume is growing, but at a slower pace than what was reported by the respondents in the previous survey. You had a modest price appreciation as well. And then there's also a more moderate growth outlook in the next 12 months. I will show you the data later on, so I'm not showing it in these slides, just to keep the numbers, in suspense for now. But, what's happening to the land market, it's not something that's different from what's happening in the housing and commercial market. We just released existing home sales, and we've seen a contraction in existing home sales year-over-year basis. So this is still a positive, the results we got here are still a positive indicator of the trends in the land market. So it's a slow but a steady growth for land market transactions. Okay, so before we go into the main results, I just like to briefly go through the economic environment. And the reason I'm doing this is that, as you know, the economic environment is important in shaping, the land market. Land market is very much defined by income of people, population growth, employment growth. So we have to understand what is happening in the economy overall, and say in agricultural price commodities, and that will sort of already give us an idea of what took place and help us explain the trends that we are seeing in the land market. Okay, so as you can see, economic growth strengthened in 2008. Growth picked up in 2008 compared to 2017. You can see that upward arrow there, 2017 to 2018. And underpinning that growth was a strong consumer demand and also strong private investment spending. So the growth, the strong growth in 2018 was partly coming from the boost from the tax cuts and the Jobs Act. So to recall, the tax rates for individual income tax filers was reduced. You also had a reduction in the corporate tax rate from 35% to 21%. So with strong growth, you had a strong employment growth as well. Since 2010, non-farm employment had already increased by about 19 million, or an average of 2.4 million. And for 2018, the unemployment rate fell below 4%. So the latest reading was 3.9%. And we have never had an employment rate fall this low. So as I said, GDP growth and benefits those engaged, particularly in recreational land sales, transitional development land, subdivision, and whole lot selling, and commercial land. So let's take a look at what's happening to commercial real estate prices. As of 2018, third quarter, commercial real estate prices also picked up from a year ago, 6.5% on the aggregate. And all commercial sectors showed a price increase. The commercial property price index from the National Council of Real Estate Investment Fiduciaries, or NCREIF, showed that price for office properties rose 10%, apartments 6.5%, very strong growth, retail 5%, and industrial 4%. So you can see that line sloping upward. So apartment continues to pick up with the rental vacancy rates, with low rental vacancy rates in many areas, particularly in the West region like California, and also in the South like Texas. So the demand for commercial space, would boost the demand for commercial land. Now let's see what's happening to home prices. Oops, I advanced a bit. Okay. So home sales, on the other hand, cooled off in 2018. And the reason for that is since 2012, the housing market has been on a very strong recovery path. Prices were rising at double-digit rates, but wage growth was not rising as fast. And so even if the economy was generating jobs, wage growth was slower. And so that hurt affordability. Home prices were still, a home purchase was still affordable because interest rates were at very low levels, below 5% and below 4% in 2017. And so that helped home buyers afford a home, But with home prices continuing to increase and with mortgage rates now starting to rise in 2018, affordability, was just deteriorating, and that sort of slowed the housing market in 2018. So prices started cooling, and home sales also started falling. Prices, to be clear, home prices are still appreciating, but they're just appreciating at a slower rate now. But that is good actually in a sense, because the pace of growth of home prices is now falling in line with the pace of growth of wages. So ultimately that'll make homes more affordable, particularly for those in the lower end of the market. And why are we showing this? Well, a stronger demand for home sales or a weaker demand for home sales will have impact also on the demand for residential land. And what about agriculture prices? Well, agriculture prices heavily influence the demand for agriculture and farmland. And we have seen, farm prices continuing to trend downwards since 2014, particularly for prices for livestock, for all crops such as corn, wheat, soy, and however, and fruits and nuts dipped a bit in 2015, but they have not fallen as much as prices for all other crops and livestock and agricultural farm products in general. So, the stable prices for fruits and nuts would be beneficial for, those engaged in the sale and exchange of agricultural irrigated cultivable land. And let's look at log and timber. So while crop prices have remained depressed, prices of logs, bolts, timber, and plywood and wood chips are holding up. So as of October 2018, producer prices were up 4% compared to a year ago. So prices for logs and timber are appreciating as housing starts continues to increase to meet the backlog in housing construction. So housing starts are now averaging about 1.2 million from about 600,000 in 2007. So that demand for housing continues to increase, and but still that is below the pace that is needed to meet household formation of about 1.7 million. So, you know, we expect the demand for housing to still increase moving forward due to demographic changes, and that would also increase the demand for timber and then the value of timberland. So just to wrap up this section in summary, we've had strong economic and job growth that has led to a continuous increase in commercial prices. Residential land prices is driven by the demand for homes, but home prices have been rising, but at a slower pace due to affordability constraints and the increase in mortgage rates. However, demand for timber remains strong as housing starts continue to increase in line with household formation of about 1.7 million. With that, let me now go to the survey's main findings. Okay, so land sales volume continued to grow, but at a more modest pace in the previous 12 months. So just to be clear, so we asked the respondents, what was the % increase in your dollar sales volume during the period September 2017 to October 2018 compared to the previous 12-month period? And so respondents gave us a number, 1%, 3%, 5%, and so we averaged that. And on average, land sales volume of the respondents rose at a slower pace of 2% compared to 4% in 2017. Now, among the types of land, you can see in the chart that the strongest growth was for residential land, which rose 4%. But you know, that is a slower pace of growth than the 5% in the 2017 survey. If you can see those light shaded numbers there on the screen, those would be your 2017 numbers. So residential was the fastest pace of growth, and also commercial and recreational land. So this, now as you can see, the agricultural land rose at a slower pace of 1%. And as I explained earlier, you know, we attribute this to the depressed sales for agricultural commodity prices. So why did land sales volume go down? Well, partly that is due also to the slower pace of growth of land prices. So again, on average, respondents reported that the price of land per acre was up by 2% during the 12-month reference period compared to the previous year. So this is a slower pace of appreciation compared to the 3% average growth in the 2017 survey. The chart again shows that you have very strong price growth in residential land and commercial land. 5% for residential, 4% for commercial. Industrial land is also, you know, growing at a good rate of 3%, and you know, this would be due to the demand for you know, industrial space, the data warehousing, and even for commercial land, the need for industrial space is just really one of the bright spots for the commercial sector. Again, here you can see that agricultural price growth was more muted at 1%. So this slide shows you the outlook in the next 12 months for land sales. So again, we also ask respondents over the next 12 months compared to the current 12-month period, how do you see your sales growing? And on average, they said 2% growth, about the same as last year, 2% as well. But if you look at the types of land, again, very strong growth for residential land because of that strong household formation that I mentioned about, and the fact that you know, current housing starts and new home construction is just running about 1.2 million compared to the 1.7 million household formation. So, you know, there's still a lot of housing demand moving forward, and you know, our respondents are able to sense that in their local markets. So you see growth there of 3% still for residential and commercial land, though that growth for residential land is more tempered than the 4% current rate that they have reported. So still about the same growth for agricultural land, but again, the key drivers of the land market, I would say, would be residential, commercial, industrial, recreational, as well as timber and ranch lands. So you don't really see much growth for agricultural land there, agricultural land sales. And this just shows you also the expected average price change in the price of land per acre over the next 12 months among the respondents. Similar story. It's the strongest growth, although modest compared to the current growth rate. The strongest growth will be for residential, commercial, industrial, recreational land, and also some greenfield development land. All relating to strong household formation, and also I think related to you know, the technology boom that is happening and the boom in e-commerce, which just demands more space for this last mile, the final mile supplier distribution chain, and also for data warehousing. So those are the strongest growths in land prices that our respondents you know, anticipate in the coming 12 months. Okay, so let's now dive deeper into, again, the characteristics of the land transactions during the period October 2017 to September 2018. So regions 7, 8, 9, and 10 comprised 70% of all the land sales. So to recall, region 7, well, the strongest, 23% of land sales are occurring in region 8. And to recall, region 8 would be Texas and Oklahoma. 18% in region 10. Region 10 comprises the states of Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida. 17% in region 7. That will be the Midwest areas of Nebraska, Kansas, Iowa, Missouri, Illinois, and Indiana. And then 12% for region 9. Which are the southern states of Arizona, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, and Kentucky. So regions 7, 8, 9, 10 states in the south and a little bit of the Midwest regions account for the bulk of the land sales that were reported by our 809 respondents. What type of land are our respondents selling? Recreational land, and 28%, and also a residential land. So those account for nearly 50% of land sales. And then followed by timber, 13%, and also ranch lands. So, of course, this is all at the national level. So how do we see this breakdown at the regional level? Okay, so by type of land, so region 1 is mainly residential land. Again, region 1 would be, let me look at my map, surprise, Maine, New Hampshire, Connecticut, Vermont, and New York. Now, as you can see there, region 1 is 100%. Of course, this does not by any means say that there were no other types of land. So just as a caution on these graphs, we really just view the numbers here, not as hardcore estimates, but more as indicative of the profile of land sales that our land professionals are engaged in. So based on the respondents that we had, you could say that most of them were, what did happen? Most of them, oops, someone is drawing. Most of them are engaged in, most region 1 respondents were engaged in residential land sales. So what about for recreational land? So the region there where recreational land sales are most predominant, recreational land will be the aqua blue color, would be region 2. And region 2 includes the states of West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, Delaware. So I guess, so recreational land would include, land for, say, camping, mostly, I think it's for camping. I was told by, when I talked with several RLI members. So not a surprise, right? Delaware, West Virginia, when you think of West Virginia, Delaware, you think of recreation and your weekend getaways. For timberland, that would be the sort of the green one. That would be the area, the region where timber sales predominate in that region would be region 9. So region 9 comprises Kentucky, Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi, Arkansas, and Louisiana. So lots of timberlands sold there. And the dark brown would be ranches or ranch lands. 40% of region 8 land sales are 40% of region land sales pertain to ranch land transactions. And I guess you could guess who is region 8, right? So that would be Texas and Oklahoma. So so again, look at this data as indicative of the characteristics and the profile of land sales that are going on in these regions. But and the numbers would be around this figure, but just treat these figures with caution because of the limited sample size that we have. Okay, so well, we also ask our respondents, what is the price of land per acre that you sold. And the reason we were asking this is that, as I mentioned before, we collect data on existing home sales. We have an idea of median home sales prices. We also have an idea of, say, the price per square foot for commercial land. And we also have an idea, I think, for agricultural land prices, because that data is collected by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. But we don't have much information about other types of land, such as recreational land sales. And so we thought that this would be a good question to ask in the survey. So the median price per acre for residential land would be $15,000, a decrease there from $21,000. And I've already mentioned a while ago that home prices, have been slowing. So this decrease in the median price per acre is a reflection of that. So so anyway, these are the median price per acre that were reported to us by our respondents, and use this when you do your business planning if you need this information. In terms of the median land acreage, so our respondents also reported a decrease from 58 acres last year to 53. Not a significant decrease, but there seems to be a decrease in land acreage. But look at this by type of land. So if you want to buy a ranch land, typically what would that land size be? 115 acres. If you want to buy a timberland, typically what would that be? 127 acres, right? Or agricultural non-irrigated land, 141 acres. And if you couple that with the median price that I showed a while ago, so you more or less have an idea of how much investment you would need typically to purchase, say, a ranch land or a timberland or a recreational land. So just use these two pieces of information together, the median price per acre and also the median land acreage, to get a sense of, how much money we're talking about when either you intend to buy land or to sell land. Actually, here it is. So I've made a computation. So I've actually multiplied, I think, the price per acre and the median land acreage. And so if you're looking at, and this is in thousands, right? So if you're looking to buy, say, residential land, that would be 175,000. But if you're looking to buy agriculture irrigated land, I think this would be land used for what? For vineyards. So that's about $1 million. Agriculture non-irrigated land, 740,000. Now, if you're looking to buy timber, that will be cheaper, about 300,000. Recreational land, you want to invest in that and maybe do business, set up a camping site somewhere. So that would be cheaper, 250,000. Ranch lands would be about $500,000. Okay. Again, we also collect on information about if you were to sell your land, how long is it on the market? So for all types of land, typically 90 days. But commercial land that is sold would typically be on the market for 6 months. And then timber for, 3 months, 180 days, half a year for commercial land. And then 120 days or 4 months for timber. So again, this data here just gives you kind of an idea of, if you were to buy or sell land, how much is your waiting time? and how much resources do you have to commit if you know intend to purchase, buy or sell land. In terms of financing, so 41% of land sales are paid for by cash, and then debt financing accounts for 36%, whereas 1031 exchanges would account for about 11%. So perhaps the share of lands traded at exchange might increase in the future because of the recent a law that was just passed promoting opportunity zones. So opportunity zone, an investment in an opportunity zone fund, which would invest in an opportunity zone, is really a way to defer capital tax gains. And so similar to the deferment of capital tax gains for 1031 exchanges. So there might be more types of financing from 1031 exchanges and simply the exchange of land to take into account that tax deferral. Okay, what are the sources of debt financing? So local banks, you know, make up local banks, regional banks, and agricultural credit banks make up about 2/3 or 68% of all types of debt financing. So the SBA and the GSEs are not much into this, as well as the national banks, which also only account for about 10%. Now, respondents also reported to us what are the issues affecting their land transactions, mainly financing. As I mentioned a while ago from that chart, you know, you have a lot of local and regional banks, not a lot yet of the big banks coming in. So financing would be, financing was a major issue identified by the respondents, as well as zoning regulations. I mean, we're talking about land, right? So this is like an obvious answer. So we ask whether zoning regulations have become more difficult in the past year, and yeah, so about a third, slightly more than a third said that zoning regulations have become more difficult in the past year. And so if you recall also an earlier slide that I showed about the types of land transactions, you don't really see any sales for development land going on. You know, there's nothing much there. So these are just some of the issues reported by the respondents. Again, if you're an ongoing land professional, or just for anyone, you know, for an ordinary person like me, say if I want to invest in land, you know, so these are the issues that I think these are the issues mentioned by the respondents that one expects to face when dealing in land transactions. So appraisals in rural areas, you know, was identified as one. You know, it's hard. Rural areas are far from each other. You know, they're not contiguous. So, so appraisals there, the appraisal valuation is more difficult in rural areas, and that's related to number 2. So, you know, having a property comps. Property comparables when you list land is a big issue, but there was a respondent who said that this is getting better as brokers cooperate with their local MLS. Financing was cited as an issue, and then also grain prices need to become higher. We already saw that in the previous slide that commodity prices have been depressed since 2012. And then some other issues like the effect of rising interest rates, the tariff wars that are going on, which would affect, yes, you know, if there's a tit for tat, and if the trade war with China escalates, so, you know, the U.S. Exports a lot of agricultural products. I mean, I don't have the figure right now in my head, but you know, if you have a higher tariff on agricultural products, that will impact also the desirability of agricultural land, and that would impact prices. So other types are zoning and of course, and flood insurance payments. In general, just the high cost of land development and the regulations, what one respondent identified as bothersome regulations that slows the land transaction process. So just some, let me now go to just some basic information about the listing platforms and sources of market information. So where can you find that? MLS comprise 70%. Most people go to Landcom also and LoopNet and CoStar to list their land. So this won't sum up to 100% because respondents identified several land listing platforms. And then where they get their statistics about land prices, the local appraiser, and also they do courthouse and research. And they also go through their MLS. And a third go to our own REALTORS property resource. Sorry, not a third, just about slightly more than a fourth. So thank you so much. That ends my presentation, and I'd be happy to take questions.
All right, everyone, we're going to now move into the Q&A portion of this webinar. If you've not already submitted your questions for Gay into the chat box, please do so now, and we'll try to get to as many as possible. Gay, just to get you started, I bet a bunch of people on this call are really wondering what's the overall economic outlook for 2019?
Yes, so it's still an outlook for growth. Overall, the economy is still going to be growing, but it'll just be growing at a slower pace than it did in the past years. So we're looking at a 1.9% GDP growth for 2019 and a slower pace compared to about 3% that we've had this year. And the main drag on growth is really the rising interest rate environment. So home prices have been rising too fast. Inflation has been rising a bit, and that's just the way that our Federal Reserve Bank conducts, monetary policy. So they don't want the economy to overheat. They don't want inflation to overheat, and they think that job growth is still strong given the momentum that we've had this year. So they're slowing down inflation a bit by raising interest rates a bit also. But that'll cut into growth. But overall, we'll still see positive growth for positive overall economic growth. Although for home prices and home sales, we're going to see zero growth.
Okay, and then I do have a question here that says, can the report be made available to all participants? And I can actually answer that. That is on the RLIland.com website. If you go under the About Us tab, there's one for the land market survey. And this report, as well as all previous reports, are posted there in the archive. So you can all access the report there. And then, Gay, I do have another question for you. It says, I realize all this information is mostly from the past. Due to the Farm Bill passing, what is expected for the future, and how will the Farm Bill affect it?
I'm not quite familiar with the provisions of the Farm Bill, but to the extent that that provides financial support to our farmers. Makes it easy to engage in, farm transactions. That would certainly, be a boost for farm prices. The main thing really that's dragging farm prices, farm agricultural land right now is the low commodity prices. So I think more than anything, if you see an increase in agricultural farm prices, that will boost the demand for land.
Great answer. All right. Does anyone else have any questions for our presenter for Gay? The same person was wondering if you have any information about hemp could be impacting land market values.
Hemp, H-E-M-P?
Yes.
That would be the price of hemp.
Mm.
I'm sorry, I'm not.
Yeah, I think that question is probably going to be more for Russell Riggs, who's our NAR legislative liaison. He could probably speak a little more to that. And if you want more information on that, Lori, feel free to shoot me an email and I can put you in contact with him. My email is jfriedrich, F-R-I-E-D-R-I-C-H, @realtors.org, and I'll put that in the chat box as well. And we could try to get you some information on that from him. All right, it looks like we're rounding out on almost an hour and we don't, oh, let me see, we got one more question that just popped in here. Do the numbers reflect the rezoning of land, such as the amount of land being purchased that is being rezoned for residential due to population growth in certain areas?
Well, yes, because, prices are a reflection of demand and supply. And so if lands are being rezoned from one type to another, some types of, the supply of some types of land will increase and supply will decrease in others. So I think the responses that our respondents gave would reflect those rezoning developments and changes.
The person who asked the question says, great, thanks. All right, so we are gonna go ahead and close out the webinar, but if you do have more questions for Gay, she has so kindly provided her contact information for all of you. It's on the screen right now, and it will also be in the follow-up email that we send you after the webinar. We will also be making a copy of this webinar or a recording of this webinar available on our website under the web